We help our relatives migrate to the US and they refuse to chip in on living costs and decide to move out. Now they are begging to come back because they had the worst decision of their life. Some of my relatives moved to the US a few months ago. My parents let one of the families, Uncle Ben, Aunt May, and two cousins Mary and Stacy, live with them. My parents live in a very nice, walkable city. Their apartment is in a great location close to public transit but in a quiet area. Unfortunately, it's also very expensive. My parents' apartment would easily cost $4.5K a month to rent, where they live, so despite it being a tight living situation, it was really the only option currently for the relatives who just moved. They had basically no money, no credit, and their jobs would for now be limited to minimum wage jobs. We fronted the cost of their immigration fees, got them phones, found my cousins free English classes at a public library a 5-minute walk from my parents, got my cousins jobs at a Dunks that's about a 1.5 miles from the house and a 10 to 15 minute bus ride away. My parents found my uncle a job at a Dunks slightly further away, but still less than 2 miles. However, he couldn't get past the training. My parents continued to try to find him jobs, but it was taking more time than expected. Aunt May refused to work. Still, both the cousins had jobs, so they had some income. My parents found one of the cousins a job at a bakery, but she didn't like the hours. I got the other one an interview at a grocery store that would have paid more, but she missed the phone interview. That's all to say, we were trying to get them jobs and doing our best to find jobs for people with limited English while also trying to set them up for future success via English classes, applying for various public housing, and getting them some work experience. After 4 to 5 months, my parents approached my aunt and uncle about them starting to chip in for groceries and utilities since the two cousins had been working for a couple of months at that point. My parents went from having 2 people and a cat to now having 6 people and a cat to house and feed. My dad went from getting groceries 2x a month to having to go every week. My parents aren't well off either. They live a frugal lifestyle and my dad was fortunate to buy the apartment they live in a long time ago, or else we would have been priced out a long time ago. Apparently, that was too much of an ask, so they said they will move out. Completely fine since nobody was forcing them to stay and it wasn't doing my parents any favors. The whole time my relatives lived with my parents, my aunt and uncle would constantly mention that they had other family and friends in other parts of the US that would help them out. Where these family and friends were when I spent hours helping with their immigration applications, fronting their immigration fees, buying them phones to use in the US, or even getting them winter clothes, I have no idea. So my dad said, fine, if that's what you want to do, then move out since you don't want to pay us anything and have all these other people that can help you. Pretty much a week after the conversation about chipping in, they had someone from my aunt's side of the family fly from Michigan and then drive them 13 plus hours from where we are to Michigan. Guess my relatives were correct in having other people that can help them. Before they moved, I suggested my uncle or my aunt and uncle go to Michigan first and see how it is before making such a big change. He refused. We even found places in NJ where the cost of living was lower. They could have jobs and still be close enough to all our family for visits, but they refused because they didn't trust the family friend who lived in that area that offered to help. The reason they didn't trust this family friend is because he had the audacity to say that in order to find an apartment, he'd need them to put a deposit down for it. He wouldn't front it for them. Once they moved to Michigan, they quickly realized the help there is more limited than what they had here and it's not quite as nice over there. My uncle kept talking about factory jobs he could do out in Michigan and he got one. However, it's not quite as cushy as he was imagining since they are basically out of the home from 5 in the morning to 4 to 5 p.m. My aunt even decided she now can work despite telling us no earlier. The area itself is not as nice and my cousins don't feel safe walking around. There is no good way for them to get around without a car, which they don't have. They are being nickeled and dimed for everything that their friends over there are helping them out with. Not quite the same situation they had while living with my parents. When my aunt and uncle have called me, it's all complaints about how tough the work is, how his blood pressure is high, how my aunt can't sleep with the stress, they want to move back closer, etc. Even one time said something along the lines of, I'm of course not asking you to help, but we are having a tough time. Tone basically being one of expecting me to offer to help in some way. I have just said hopefully things will get better because what else am I supposed to say? At this point, I rarely answer their calls because it will just be complaints and whining.